Joining us, the voice of the Vols, Bob Kesling. Bob, I appreciate your time today, my friend.
Well, it's good to be with you. Thanks.
26 years now as the director of broadcasting for the Vol Network and the voice of the Vols. Does it seem like it's been 26 years?
It's flown by. It's been an incredible journey. Uh, I, I never when I came to Tennessee to go to school, I could have never have dreamt back in 1972 that one day I would be the lead announcer on the Vol Network. And all those great years, I had a chance to work with John Ward and just the fabulous players I've met, the fabulous games I've been able to call, the exciting moments in football and basketball and baseball. And Lady Vol basketball. I started really my first play-by-play job uh, for the university was doing Lady Vol basketball back in the late 70s when Pat Summit was Pat Head and just getting started. And nobody could have envisioned what that was going to turn into. So I got a chance to call her first six national championships. And then during that time, I was still able to work on the Vol Network and do other things. And so I've been blessed. I've had a lot of great opportunities. I've had a lot of great chances to do special things all over the country. And the greatest thing about it is I've never had to move my family one time.
Yeah.
A lot of times in our business, you go where the jobs are, and a lot of times you move from here to there, and you got to pick up your family and pull them out of school and put them in a different school and do all that kind of stuff. But I've been blessed. I've been able to do so many different things, and my family has never had to move one time. We've lived in West Knoxville they're in my kids' entire lives, and it's just been I kind of pinch myself all the time, just thinking how fortunate and blessed I've been to have these great jobs I've had in these great positions.
And I want to follow up with that. When you hear that title and you're called that title, the voice of the Vols, just talk about what pride and honor that must bring you when somebody calls you the voice of the Vols.
Well, I cringe a little bit because I don't really consider myself the voice of the Vols. I think John Ward earned that, and he'll always be the voice of the Vols. So I never call myself that. I always call myself, Bob Kesling of the Vol Network or the lead announcer. But still, the connotation is that I am the lead announcer on the Vol Network, and that's a lot of responsibility, and it also is pretty amazing, and I never take it for granted. Every time they run through the tee or I see a basketball team come on the floor, I just sit there and count my blessings that I'm in this position, and I've been so fortunate to have these opportunities. But I guess Lindsey Nelson was the original voice of the Vols. He's kind of created the network and got it across the state. It's interesting. I don't know if you've heard the story, but Lindsey, of course, from Columbia, Tennessee, came to Tennessee and worked in the sports information office, and they came up with went to General Neyland and had a plan to get the games, the radio games across the state through telephone link ups and different things. And so he had this whole plan drawn out, took it to General Neyland, and said, "This is the plan to get the Tennessee games across the state. It's going to be a big boom to the university and to the Tennessee athletics, and we're going to call it the University of Tennessee Football Network." And the general looked up at him and said, "Lindsey, keep it simple. Just call it the Vol Network."
Oh, right.
And
Great story.
it's been the Vol Network since then. And as far as all we're concerned, it'll always be the Vol Network because the general named it.
Very good. Let's talk about your path to the University of Tennessee. 1972, came to school, a walk-on, a fullback for the freshman football team. Just talk about your decision to come to Knoxville.
Well, Coach Fulmer was a graduate assistant on that staff in 72, and so was Tim Priest. And they both, during the season, kept telling me I needed to broaden my horizons, which was a subtle way to tell me that I needed to do something other than play football, which I was able to train to something else. But it was really it was a strange happening. I was being recruited. I was an okay high school football player just outside Dayton in Kettering, Ohio. And I'd been recruited by some smaller schools in Ohio. And so I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and if I was going to go play at one of those schools or just not play football at all. But I kind of still wanted to play and see, how long I could keep playing and how good I could be. And I had a buddy that was a basketball player at my high school, and his dad knew Ray Mears from the time that Ray Mears was coaching at Wittenberg in Springfield, Ohio, just outside Dayton. And they were coming down to talk to Coach Mears about my buddy Jeff either being a manager on the basketball team or walking on the basketball team. And they wanted to know if I wanted to go with them. I said, well, okay. I didn't even know where Tennessee was. I'd never been to Tennessee. So I said, sure, I'll go. So I came with them down to the UT campus, and I wasn't going to go sit in the basketball meeting with Coach Mears because, I'm not a basketball player. So I just wandered down to the football office and walked in and didn't have a program, didn't have a bit of film to prove I even played high school football, and walked into the secretary and I said, what is the process here for walking on the Tennessee football team? And the secretary said, well, I don't know. Would you like to talk to Coach Battle? I said, well, sure. Within 5 minutes, I'm in Coach Battle's office. My head's spinning. I can't believe this has happened. And I'm talking to the head coach at Tennessee, and he doesn't even know if I even played high school football. Then he takes me down after about 5 or 10 minutes. As it turned out, they were recruiting a couple of guys from my high school team, not me, recruiting a couple of guys. So he kind of knew a little bit about the league we played in. It was a good league up in Ohio. And so he knew that there was pretty good football. And he took me down to see Coach McClary and Kurt Watson, who were the freshman running back coaches. And maybe during that time, he called my high school coach or something to find out if I was actually legit. And so I spent a few minutes with Kurt Watson and Don McClary, and they put some film up about how the offense was going to work, and told me about Condridge Holloway, who was going to be the quarterback, and the speed option and the veer and all the things they were going to run with Condridge. And I was really impressed. They walked me back down to Coach Battle's office, and he said, well, here's a workout sheet. If you can get in school, we'd love to have you walk on the football team. I couldn't believe it was that easy. And I couldn't believe that if I'd walked in cold to Woody Hayes or Bo Schembechler or Bear Bryant's office, I would have gotten treated like that. I mean, I was flabbergasted just how nice they were and just how welcoming they were. And so I said, well, heck, I'm going to go to Tennessee and play football. This could be great. So I called my dad. And my dad was a drum major at Ohio State. So he was big time Buckeye, leading the script in Ohio and all that kind of stuff. So I called my dad and I said, listen, I think that I'm going to walk on at Tennessee. And my dad kind of was miffed. He goes, well, if you're going to go to a big school and walk on, you might go to Ohio State. I said, well, Dad, it's cheaper for me to go to Tennessee out of state than it is to go to Ohio State in state. And his next response was, go Vols. So that's how I wound up at Tennessee. But we had freshman football back then. Larry Severs was on our team. Randy Wallace was our quarterback. Ronnie McCartney was one of our defensive ends who later went to the NFL. And so we had some really good players. And I came in and was able to play on the freshman team. And we had 6 or 8 games. I can't remember how many, but we played at Alabama and we played Notre Dame. And it was really a lot of fun. I got to carry the ball and do a lot of things. And it was pretty neat. But at the end of the year, then I had to figure out, do I really want to do it? Because I knew I was never going to be a star, or maybe not even ever be a starter. And so then you got to make that determination. Is this what you want to do, or do you need to get on with your life? And I just kind of decided I needed to move on. Football was great, and I loved playing at Tennessee, and I loved wearing the orange shirt and playing at Neyland Stadium. It was really neat. But it was time to kind of move on and do something else. And I kind of figured that out. And luckily, I was then able to transition into broadcasting, and then here we are.
At that point, did you have interest in the past as a kid of being a broadcaster?
No.
Or how did that process work to where you got into broadcasting?
I was a big time sports guy. And I would, at night, I was there in Ohio. You could put the transistor radio under your pillow. That's what I did. And I listened to the Reds game. And then when that was over, I'd flip it over to listen to Bob Prince do the Pirates games in Pittsburgh. And then when that was over, I'd flip it over. I was supposed to be sleeping the whole time, but I'm listening to the game. Then I turn over and listen to Harry Carey and Jack Buck do Cardinal games. And in basketball, we were really blessed because in that area, there's such great basketball with Dayton and Cincinnati, and you could get Ohio State and Indiana and Purdue games on the radio. So every night I'm sitting there listening to stuff on the radio. And there was a magic about it when you're sitting there in a dark room with your eyes closed with a transistor radio, and suddenly you feel like you're at St. John Arena in Columbus or Mackey Arena over at Purdue. And Don Fisher at Indiana was great calling games. And so there was that kind of magic about it. And I, playing sports growing up, basketball, and played basketball in high school and ran track. And so I knew I wanted to do something in sports, but I wasn't really sure. So when I got to Tennessee, I became a PR major because I thought that would open up a lot of doors for me. And I was taking all the PR courses, and several of us one night went over to Bill Myers Stadium. We had the Knoxville Sox at that time were playing at the ballpark downtown. And we go over there and we're outraged because there's only about 400 people at the game, but we're outraged that we can't move down to the box seats, which were just metal folding chairs around the dugout. And the usher threw us out because those cost 50 cents more. So we stormed into the general manager's office. We were outraged that I think the tickets were $8 or $6 maybe, and the box seats were $6.50. We just thought that was outrageous. And so I go into the owner's office, Neil Ridley, and by the time I left, I talked myself into a summer job working at the ballpark and put the flag up and selling tickets and cooking hot dogs and taking guys to the doctor's office. And I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. And that's what I was going to do. I was going to be a general manager of a baseball team, the Chicago White Sox. I'd been to Chicago a couple of times and talked to their people up there, and I thought this was going to be my career path. And so I started writing up little 30-second voicers on the games. And I'd call them in to the radio stations at night back then, all the radio stations had nighttime DJs. And all the radio stations that would answer the phone, I'd give them these little 30-second reports on the game. And then they would run them on their morning newscast or their sportscast, as it turns out. I didn't do it for money. They didn't pay me anything extra, but I was thinking if we got some more people to the ball games, maybe I'd get a little extra money. And so there was a selfish aspect to it a little bit, but I wanted to get more people to the games. I just thought that would be better. And so WIVK radio here in town, they were carrying my little reports on their morning sportscast, and they got a job opening for a part-time sportscaster, and they called me. And I said, okay. So I was going to school, working at WIVK and working for the baseball team, and while I was in college, and loving all of it. So I graduate. Now I got to go get a baseball job. So I'm going to go to Nashville to go to the baseball meetings in Nashville, the Opryland Hotel. And I'm pulling out of the driveway. I just graduated in '78. I'm pulling out of the driveway, and Bobby Denton was the general manager. He's later the longtime PA voice at Neyland Stadium, but he general manager at WIVK, and he said, "Where are you going, hotshot?" I said, "I'm going to Nashville to get a baseball job." And he goes, "Well, we just bought WKDA over there in Nashville, and our sports guy here, Paul Lyle, just took the job as sports director in Nashville. Why don't you stay here and be our sports director?" Okay. And literally that's how it started. And I got a job at WIVK. I just graduated, so I needed a job. It was a full-time job. And that transitioned in 1980 over to Channel 10. And then while I was at Channel 10, I was still doing Lady Ball basketball, and then got a chance to do SEC football and basketball games on Jefferson Pilot in 1980. Let's see, it started in 87 doing JP games, football and basketball. And then when John Ward retired, they called me to be the lead announcer on the Ball Network. So that's a quick thumbnail of my journey through the broadcasting thing. But I never, when I came to Tennessee, I never thought, hey, I'm going to be the next, voice of Tennessee sports, or I'm going to be this big time broadcaster or whatever. I was just trying to find a job in sports somewhere, somehow, because I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. 1976 was a big year for you. Again, that position at WIVK, you got that. And then also John Ward calls you to be a spotter. Is that correct?
Well, what happened, that was another great story. The Knoxville Sox at that time, they had a manager, and that was it. There were no coaches. If you wanted to get to the big leagues and you were in a slump, you better figure it out yourself, because they didn't have anybody to help you. And because they just didn't spend that much money on minor league baseball. They had, 25 guys. And if somebody got hurt, well, you might be done playing. So they'll bring somebody up from A-ball.
Mm-hmm.
But Ernie Robertson, who was the director of photography over at UT, loved baseball. And he'd bring his film camera to the games and he would film the pitchers. And I thought it was fascinating because then he would take the pitchers over to the film room, the football room, and show them the film of how they were pitching. And they could figure out if their arm slot was bad or if they were locking their front leg and all. And we had a whole list, excuse me, of pitchers that went to the big leagues because of that. Ken Kravick and Rich Dotson and Bill Monroe and Larry Monroe, and not Bill Monroe, Larry Monroe. A bunch of guys from that team went to the big leagues because of the fact that Ernie was filming them and they could correct their mistakes and get better. Well, Ernie, we got to be friends, and he said, well, listen, we need a film editor on the Bill Battle show. I said, well, what is that? He said, all you got to do is when we film the games and then we stop the camera, puts a flash frame in there, take a pair of scissors, cut the flash frame back out of it and glue it back together. I said, okay, I can do that. Because he knew I knew something about football and wouldn't screw it up too badly. So anyway, while the game was going on, I'd be editing the game film. As soon as they shoot it, I'd have to go get it and bring it across the street there at UT to get it developed. And as soon as it's developed, then I start editing the game film. So I'd have John Ward on the broadcast listening, and I'm clipping game film during the whole broadcast. But I tried to be the best film editor in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And I think John figured that out, that I was really wanted to do a good job. And he one day came up and said, hey, listen, my spotter just quit. Said, football, so you want to be my spotter? I said, sure. And that's how it started. So it's not like I was beating down doors. I was just kind of walking into these different opportunities.
Amazing.
But sitting next to John for 15 years or 16, whatever it was, I had opportunities to go to some smaller schools to do play-by-play on radio. But I decided I would learn much more sitting next to John, learning how to do it from a master than I would kind of out in the wilderness by myself floundering. Mm-hmm. He taught me a lot. He taught me that he would allow us to make one mistake, but you couldn't make the same mistake twice. He was interesting because he wouldn't allow us. Of course, back then, not many games were on television, maybe one or two a year, but he wouldn't let us turn on the monitors in the booth, the TV monitors. He kept saying, we're radio guys. We got to get it first the right time. So no TV monitors. Really made you concentrate and focus on the game. And that was one of the big lessons that he taught me. You better keep your concentration and you better focus because this goes by as fast and you don't want to miss anything.
Bob Kesling with us today. And Bob, 1980, you mentioned you got the position at WBIR. Talk about transition or adding TV. You go from just having to worry about your voice then to how you look. Tell us about that.
That was not good either. No, it's another unbelievable story. I was sitting at WIBK one afternoon, and Judy Jenkins, the news director, called me and said that Scott Sams, their sports director, just taken a job down in Dallas. He was going to become the next Regis Philbin or afternoon morning talk show host of Dallas, and that they had an opening as a sports director. I said, okay. They said, would you be interested? I said, I've never been on television in my life. So, I can't see why I would be a candidate for that job. And they said, well, we think, we've heard you doing Lady Ball basketball and we heard your sports reports on WIBK and you're doing some UT baseball games. So we think you've got a future. So why don't you come over and audition? I said, okay. So I talked to Bobby Denton, who was the general manager. I said, they want me to audition at Channel 10. Should I do it? He said, well, you'll never get the job, but it'd be a good experience for you. So I said, okay. So I just go over the next day and I take my afternoon script from WIBK. I didn't even wear a coat and tie because I knew I wasn't going to get the job, but I thought this would be a good experience. And so I go over, and after the 6:30 newscast, they get me out on the set. First time I've really been ever on a news set. And they say, okay, we want you to go 3 minutes. We just want to see how you look and how you sound on camera. I said, okay. So there was no pressure on me because I wasn't going to get this job. And so the red light comes on, and as you know, sometimes when you're trying to speak, it comes out really nice and easy, and other times mouth doesn't work at all, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, since there was no pressure on me, it flowed out. I mean, I couldn't have done it any better. And I was just reading my script and doing not really reading, because at WIBK I just did bullet points and I would talk. And so I did that, and I got through it and didn't bobble or anything, just pretty smooth. And the news director comes out and said, "Well, Bob, that was really pretty good. Would you want to do it again?" I said, "Well, I will if you want me to, but I don't know if I can do it any better." And I said, "Did I go too long?" She said, "No, you went 2:57. I was supposed to minutes." So I think that impressed them. And then they said, "Well, we'll be in touch." I said, "Okay, I know what that meant. That I didn't get a job, and see you later."
Yeah.
So anyway, so I leave and take my wife out to dinner, and everything's great. And I tell her that I'm not getting that job. We're going to keep plowing ahead here in radio. And they called me the next day. They said, "We want to hire you." And I said, "Hire me as what?" They said, "Sports director." I said, "You just want me to run the department?" "No, we want you to be the 6 and 11 o'clock anchor." I said, "I've never been on television. What are you guys doing? You're making a horrible mistake." And but they did. They hired me. And before I went on Channel 10, I had to go to New York to do promos with the CBS guys. And so we had dinner at Gallagher Steakhouse. We're staying at the Marriott Marquis right there in Times Square. And I'm 26 years old. I don't know what I'm doing. They've got all these grizzled veteran sportscasters from all over the country coming in to do these promos. And so I go to Black Rock the next day, and they had a room set up. They had several rooms, but they had this room set up. They had 3 chairs, 3 stools, a producer, and a camera guy from CBS. And we had a script. And it was like, "Hi, I'm Bob Kesling of Action 10 Sports and watch the NFL on Channel 10. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to be CBS guys. But I didn't know who it was. And I was too dumb to ask and too naive. And so the door opens, and here comes Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire, the number 1 team at CBS at that time. And I'm going, "Hello, Bob. I'm Pat Summerall." I exactly who you are. So we do these promos, and I'm Pat Summerall, and I'm Bob Kesling. I'm talking about octaves too. I'm scared. I don't know what I'm doing. And watch Bob on Action 10 Sports. Watch the NFL on CBS. Then they said, "Well, you can ask Pat and Brookshire, some questions about the upcoming season." So I asked him a couple of questions, and they got up and left. Took about 15 minutes or so. Well, then the door opens again. Here comes John Madden and Dick Stockton. This is before they teamed up Madden and Summerall. And Madden comes, "Hey, Bob." He doesn't know me from Madden. "Hey, you doing, Bob?" He's throwing me around the room. And, "Oh, get this thing. This is great." He's doing all this stuff. So we sit down and we do the same thing. "Hi, I'm Bob Kesling. Watch the NFL on CBS. And this is John Madden. Watch my buddy Bob on Action 10 Sports." And we get done with that, and my head's kind of spinning. And the producer goes, "You really did a pretty good job with all of that. How old are you?" I said, "Well, I'm 26. "You're the youngest guy here." I said, "Well, okay." She said, "Well, how long you been in the business?" I said, "I've been in the business about 30 minutes. That's about business." But you know what? Her telling me I did a good job gave me a lot of confidence that maybe I could do this. Mm-hmm. And without her saying I did a good job, I probably would have gone back to Channel 10 and just flopped. But she gave me the confidence that maybe I could do it. And so I got back to Channel 10. I didn't know how to shoot or edit a camera. First night, they give me a camera and they say, "Go out and shoot UT football practice." I don't know which end is up, but I figured it out. And then I didn't know how to edit, and somebody helped me, gave me a couple of tips, and I figured it out. I'd stay after work and I'd work on editing, and I'd work on my shooting, and I'd work on all the little things, and I just worked through it. But that was a great opportunity, and I had 18 great years at Channel 10 as the sports director there, and met a lot of people and went a lot of places and just had a great time.
And you touched on it earlier, that the transition into the voice of the Vols, director of broadcasting for the Vol Network. John Ward, of course, retiring in 1998 into that season. Did you know at that time you were going to be the heir apparent, or how did that transition happen?
No, I had no idea. I was under contract to Channel 10. My contract was running out like in April, right after the basketball season. So that was good timing for me. And my contract at Jefferson Pilot to do SEC football and basketball games on TV was running out. And I had made a couple of demands at Channel 10, minor demands about, some money and don't mess with my schedule and some other stuff that I thought were minor. And I was going to re-up my contract with Channel 10, but they didn't want to meet those terms at that time. I guess they wanted to wait for my contract to run out in April before we talked about it. But I didn't send a tape in. I didn't send a resume in. I didn't call Doug Dickey, the athletic director, to tell him I was interested. I didn't know if I was a candidate for the job. Sometimes when those things open, they're usually closed. They've already got the guy in mind.
Mm-hmm.
When they know their announcer is going to leave, they've already got somebody else in mind. But I had not talked to Coach Dickey at all about it and hadn't talked to anybody at the Ball Network about it. And so I didn't know if I was a candidate or not. And after John's last basketball game in the NCAA tournament, that was on a Saturday, on Monday morning, Doug Dickey called me and said, "Are you interested in the Tennessee job?" And I told him I'm interested in talking about it. So he said, "Well, this was at 7:30 in the morning." And he said, "Be in my office at 9:00. And so I showed up at his office at 9:00, and we met on Monday and we met again Wednesday and kind of worked it out. And by the next Monday, I was going to be named the next lead announcer on the Ball Network. So it was an amazing week. And it was tough because I really enjoyed doing the games on television for Jefferson Pilot. Got to travel around to all the different SEC venues and doing basketball. And it was getting to meet all the coaches and it was really a lot of fun. But Tennessee's home. Tennessee's my alma mater. And when your alma mater calls, there's that tug that you've got to go and do it. And it's interesting. I was trying to weigh everything and figure out what exactly I wanted to do. I was always leaning toward taking the Tennessee job just because of just what it is and how special. And I was asking my wife finally, I said, "Tammy, what do you think I should do?" She goes, "I'm glad you asked." She said, "Your kids are in middle school right now. Wouldn't you rather the next few years be tailgating with them after a Tennessee football game instead of being in an airport trying to get home from Starkville?" I said, "That makes a lot of sense." And then I called Coach Dickey and said, "I'm taking the Tennessee job." But that's how it worked. And it was one of those deals. Again, it was a job I didn't apply for and didn't send a tape in. And I was just fortunate that Coach Dickey thought I was talented enough to be the guy that took over. And, the one thing was in my advantage is that I had worked doing Lady Vol basketball for so long. I'd worked on the Vol Network for so long, and doing Vol calls. So everybody knew who I was. They might not have liked me or might have their opinions about me, but at least they knew who I was. And that was a big check mark, and I think in my favor.
Bob Kesling, the voice of the Vols, with us today. And Bob, I'm just curious, when you're preparing for a broadcast, what did your week look like? What does the preparation look like getting ready for that broadcast?
I've always said that doing games is the next best thing to playing games. You still get the same butterflies. You still get the same excitement, the tingle a little bit when you're getting ready to do the game. And when they run through the tee, you feel like you're ready to play too. And so that's great. But just like when you're playing football, there's something you got to do every day. You got to do something on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and be ready when Saturday comes around. And that's kind of the same thing. In fact, usually my week starts on Sunday night, because I'll watch whatever team that Tennessee's getting ready to play. I'll watch their game from that previous Saturday. So kind of get to know the numbers and the players and who's involved and how they played and all that kind of stuff. And then Monday, you start working on your spot charts and you do interviews with Tennessee players and you listen to the press conferences. Tuesday, I pretty much spend most of the day on the opposing team, getting my boards up to date. Wednesday, I'd spend looking up newspaper articles on both teams and catching up on SEC notes. And then Thursday, go to practice, watch practice and make sure who's out there playing. And then Friday, Pat, Ryan, and I get together and we talk to the coaches. And then Pat and I then kind of plot out how we think the broadcast should go, and that sets you up for Saturday. So you do all your work during the week, and you put it together on Saturday, and you go to work. But if you fall behind, it's really hard to catch up during the week. So you got to be really disciplined in terms of getting your work done and getting your spot charts put together, and you got to listen to the opposing coaches' press conferences and all that stuff. You've got to read their notes and make sure you're up to date, because with the internet now, I mean, the fans are so sophisticated, they know everything about both teams. And so you need to be up to speed and know a lot of things about both teams as well.
On a humorous note, I'm just curious, how much time have you spent practicing how to pronounce Nico Iamale? I can't even say it.
You're close. You're good. You're close. It took a while. There's a nice thing they do on the UT, and a lot of schools do it, but when they have the rosters, they have a guy on there that pronounces it for you. And so I've gone there and I've probably punched that Iamaleava about 100 times trying to get it. But once you get it, it kind of flows. I mean, it's Iamaleava, so it'll be easy. But I tell you what, he's a very talented young man, and
he is.
He looks the part, tall and lanky, and can run and throw, and he throws a really catchable ball. It's when you watch him in practice, it like he puts it out there and just hangs on a string, and the guys just run underneath it and catch it. It's a little bit different from Joe Milton. Joe had a bazooka, but he threw it like a bazooka most of the time.
Yeah.
But Nico just kind of lays it out there on a string, and it's going to be really fun to see exactly how good he can be. I think he'd be really special, but we'll see. It's he's got to do it on the field, and his teammates got to help him. But in this day and age in college football, if you don't have a quarterback, you can't play.
Right.
And Tennessee's got a quarterback, and they've got a couple more coming down the line too. So they're in pretty good shape at quarterback.
That's the voice of the Vols, Bob Kesling, a 2015 inductee in the Greater Knoxville Sports Hall of Fame. And Bob, it's just a pleasure to watch you work. You're a humble guy. You're consistent. In today's world, that's hard to find. So we appreciate the consistency that you have worked at the University of Tennessee.
Well, I thank you for those comments. And again, it's been a pleasure. It's a huge responsibility and a role, because so many people love this university, love the athletic teams. And so your job is to make sure that you present what's going on in a truthful, forthright manner. And I try and do that every time I get behind the mic, but I never take it for granted. And I've been so blessed to have this role, and I hope it goes on for a long time.
That's Bob Kesling. And Bob, again, thank you for being available today and giving us your time.
You're welcome. Thanks. Talk to you soon, I hope.